thinking about leasing out our house, is there any way you can get us an evaluation on what do you think it could lease for? Okay? So, and these aren't stories that I'm just, that I'm the only one that has experienced this. Have you guys ever wore your name badge?
Yeah.
Have people ask you about the name badges? Yeah, right? So all I'm doing is I'm just giving you one more piece to add to your work repertoire, one more tool that you could use in your business. I put it in the email, but I gotta tell you, I love, love, love Ralph Lauren. But that little logo with the horse and the polo doesn't make me any money. Okay? It doesn't put any money in my family's bank account. And despite the fact that I love their clothing line, and despite the fact that I love what he has and what he makes, and I love the style and all that, all I can say is that by me wearing my brand and by me going out there promoting it, it's going to help build me more business. Yes or no?
Yes.
It is. So use the order form. Like I said, right now for everybody that's ordering, you guys, now we can process credit card payments, whereas unlike before we couldn't. Now you can pay with credit card. And for all the agents that are purchasing, let everybody know that it's a 25% discount for the agents. Okay? And we'll make sure that we get it processed and we get it ordered. I hope to have a shipment here within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, that's my goal. So, without further ado, you want me to introduce him, Rob, or would you like to introduce him?
Noe.
Noe, I'm going to let our head of education, Noe Peña, top producing agent, introduce our speakers today. Okay?
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome again to another one of our trainings. And I just want to, before we get started and introduce them, I want to remind everybody something that we've been discussing at our committee meetings, which is to make sure you use these trainings to recruit. And it's not just to recruit for recruiting's sake, but to raise your commission and to help other agents where training might be lacking at their office. One of the reasons I came to this office, and probably many of us, was because training was lacking. Here we now have a structured, ongoing training every week. A little bit you can take from it is going to help you to serve your clients better. It's going to help you to be better agents and just to overall do a better job. But then again, don't forget, invite other agents. Just tell them to come over. A lot of times we have lunch provided, like today, and it'd be just a great opportunity to for other agents to meet our staff and come in and see what our office is about. So I'd like to introduce today Maria Howard and Horacio Frejo from First American.
Thank you. Thank you. Paul, how are we doing?
Great.
Good. How's everyone doing this afternoon?
Great.
Doing good, thank
We
you.
excited?
Yes.
Yes.
I am. I'm very excited. I had a beautiful, beautiful meeting at Malbec in Pasadena. It was great, great. But before I really get started, everyone, just so I can get an idea, how many of you are servicing the San Marino neighborhood? How many of you are servicing the San Marino neighborhood? How many of you are servicing Pasadena? Okay. How many of you are servicing outside of San Marino and Pasadena? All of you should be, hopefully. Okay. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about the natural hazard disclosures and how it's going to affect you positively and negatively. Okay. But before I begin, I want you to also know Maria Howard. Maria Howard is your sales representative for this area, and please get to know her. I think you have her contact information. And my biggest thing is you're going to get as much out of this as you want to. Okay? So I always stress that. So if you have a question, by all means ask it. Because my philosophy is the stupidest question is the one that's never asked. Okay? So I'm here to help you. You have me for the next 30, 40 minutes. And I want to make this as educational and fun and informative that I can. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Horacio Frejo. I'm the regional manager. So I cover 6 counties now. When Paul and I met, geez, that was almost 2 years ago, I was just a lowly county manager. And it's been great and exciting in this unique niche. So one of my biggest benefits here is to educate you, because I love to educate. I have an education background. So did everybody receive a seller's guide? I want to make sure everybody got that. Can I borrow this one more second? It looks like this.
If you didn't get it, raise your hand.
If you didn't get one, you need one. In the seller's guide, this is something that a lot of our escrow officers, our transaction coordinators, and our listing agents use even for a listing presentation, because it goes over the educational pieces of all of the legal requirements that the state of California require you to disclose. We also provide this in Spanish, and we also provide it in Chinese. Okay, so if you have clients that are bilingual or that feel strongly in Spanish, you can provide this seller's guide in Spanish. Okay? So, just want to give you that little caveat. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. You're not coming after me. The agenda today. We're going to review the laws. We're also going to look at local city elements for San Marino. We're going to look at what the CAR has included in this last year. We're also going to be looking at the AB 1511 pipeline database disclosure, the new active mine disclosure, state responsibility fees, and then minimizing risk and disclosure. We're going to talk briefly as well as about the tax portion of the disclosure. 1915 Bond Acts, and this thing called the Community Facility District Bonds, okay? Which is a very clever way to add more taxes to our property. All right, so we're going to go into that. So who the heck are we? Who is First American Natural Hazard Disclosures? We started the industry way back in the actually over 30 years ago in the 70s. Okay? We celebrated in January our 4 millionth report. We're very excited. And as well as we've spent over $1 million in the last 4 years in developing our leading technology tools for the parcel point. Everybody's seen a parcel map, right?
Yes.
Right.
Okay. We've pretty much created a parcel map for the entire state of California. So we have the entire state of California mapped out on parcels. Okay? Very, very expensive and time consuming, as you can imagine. Tax data. We're one of the only NHD companies that own our own tax data. What that means is we're going to stand behind it. If we're wrong, we will take on that liability off of you. So you're not going to court for a silly omission or error in the NHD report. Okay? Environmental data. We also include any environmental contamination sites. Okay, so the fun one is, where is it? Leaking underground fuel tanks. We also call it like leaking underground storage tanks, LUST. So you can imagine the engineers had fun with that. Contaminated landfills and industrial sites, and our 2,000-foot disclosure for our pipeline proximity disclosure. So that's who we are. This is how we keep you out of trouble. We have over $100 million in liability protection, including our E&O. We're self-insured. First American Financial owns us. So that's really good, especially in these days. RESPA compliant. I do not want to put this office, the brokerage, in any kind of disadvantage and any kind of hot water, legal hot water. Local information experts. We're one of the only NHD companies with a certified geologist. His name is Pat McClellan. He plays the nasty guitar, and he lives in Northern California, and he is our legal expert when it comes to geology. He's certified by the state of California, and he's a great asset to our division. And then updated local maps and data. I'm going to actually show you the maps of San Marino with a caveat. You know how attorneys, they love to use asterisks. A good friend of mine, Stuart, he's an attorney, real estate attorney, and he likes to put asterisks after everything, with the exception. And that's what I want to put here. I want to let you know that you can go ahead and order the NHD report right when you get the listing, right when it gets on the board. You can cancel it for free. We're not going to charge you because we are all about education. Okay, so when you get that listing, order the report so you can educate yourself about all the disclosures that are in that area so you can better educate your own self so when you do have someone coming in, you understand what's going on in that neighborhood. Okay? And the reason why I bring that up is because I'm going to show you all the different maps. And I do not need you to look at every single map and see where all the properties fall into it. That's what we do, because if you mess up, where does the liability fall on? You. Okay? So I want to make sure it falls on me and Maria, right?
Yes.
Right, Maria?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So, disclosure industry started back in '98 for the 6 minimum requirements for the state of California. California law establishes the legal obligation, that's all of you in this room, we are legally obligated to disclose material facts. Natural hazard disclosures are considered material facts. Okay? There's a big lawsuit case back in 1984. It was called the Easton versus Strasburger case. That's when, if you're a broker and you're getting your broker's license, you know that very well because the attorney and the judge cited on the real estate agent because he did his due diligence. Okay? You need to do your due diligence. And that's very important in these days because in the state of California, it's a very litigious state. That means we're sue happy. Okay? So, natural hazards are considered a material fact. You do not want to hear all the horror stories. Yes, Robert?
I do have a question. How did this industry get started, though?
Yes.
I know you said 30 years ago.
Yes.
But somebody had to start something.
Yeah.
That where all of a sudden you guys are having to put a report. I mean,
Right.
did something happen in Malibu? Did some movement, you know?
Well, it was basically 3 major natural disasters. You're looking at the Whittier Narrows earthquake in 1987. You had the Northridge earthquake in 1994. Some of you remember that. And also the Sylmar, well, we had a ton of fires. All of those natural disasters counted for $4 billion in debt, basically all of that in our cities. So you can imagine all the different lawsuits. So people are pointing fingers. Well, the real estate agent didn't disclose that. Well, I never signed the paperwork. So that's where it kind of gave the growing pains, the birth pains of this disclosure industry. So that's where it came out of. Back in the 70s, James C. Pendergrast, who is with our company, or actually retired a few years ago, he started mapping out this thing called the Alquist-Priolo Study Zone. It's fun stuff. But that's the, what is it, all the fault zones. Back in the 70s, they said, hey, you know what? I don't think it's a good idea to build on top of earthquake fault zones anymore. All right, let's make that into a law. And let's make it so that if we're going to build, you have a 50-foot setback from these fault zones. Okay? So the San Andreas Fault, we call it the Alquist-Priolo Study Zone, and that's where it gave birth in the 70s. Fast forward to 1998, Senator Torlakson, he needed some kind of bill to lobby, and that was it. Senator Torlakson basically was approached by First American, and we helped to lobby it. How many of you know about the carbon monoxide detector in your homes now, right?
Yeah.
Guess who was a big sponsor of that? Home Depot. Why?
I wonder why.
I wonder why, okay? Because Home Depot obviously wants to sell these carbon monoxide detectors, right? So, same thing with the natural hazard disclosures. We saw that definite need because we saw a ton of agents getting what? Sued over non-disclosure. Okay, silly things, really silly things. So, that's the birth. Oh.
So, a lot of the agents are ranging from, I just got my license,
Yes,
to like veteran.
yes.
So, just so that they understand where this falls in the equation, because
Yes.
I can tell already, like, some of their faces are kind of like, what does this have to do with us?
Yes.
So for the newer agents. So how, can we kind of just explain where this, it falls?
Yeah. Well, how many of you know, everybody knows that this is in the transaction, right? So, in the actual transaction, so how many of you just got your license about a year ago, or within 2 years? 2 years? Okay, within the last 10 years? 10 years? How many have had their license for over 12 years? Okay. So those who are over 12 years, this is something that they've actually developed, you know, because you kind of seen the process of it. Those of you who haven't, okay, the original way that this was posted was in the actual obligation to the seller. The seller had to be legally obligated to disclose these things. So, who's representing the seller?
Agents.
The listing agent, right? The seller's agent. So, now by default, who does it fall under now?
The agents.
The seller's agent. Okay? So, if you are representing the listing agent, guess what? You are now legally obligated to disclose these things. Okay? And we're going to get into what you need to disclose. All right? Does that answer the question? Okay. So, disclosure industry. Good stuff. Here are the 6 minimum disclosures that are required by the state of California. 100-year flood zones, which, by the way, are required for flood insurance. So if they fall into a flood zone A 500, Z something, it's actually in our report, and it actually states whether or not you're going to need flood insurance. Okay? It doesn't, that's very, very important, because you're looking at a couple $100 a year from the owner. Yes?
Does that mean if there was any floods during the last 100 years, or was it 100
Yes.
years?
Yep.
Not
So-
determine that?
Yep. So basically, a 100-year flood zone is in the last 100 years there's been a flood there. Okay. So FEMA and the California state regulators, that's how they delineate it. It goes 100, then it goes to 500, then 10,000.
Wow.
Okay. But flood zones, the ones that we're really required about, or concerned about, I should say, are the ones that fall under the 100-year flood zones, because the likelihood is pretty high that you're gonna have to get flood insurance, which is determined by your homeowner's insurance provider. Okay? Another caveat to this is, what if the seller or the buyer says, wait, we're not in a flood zone. I can't believe that. We're on a hillside, and you know what? The property extends down to the valley, but the property is not in a flood zone. Well, that's where you call Maria up, or myself, and we pull up a flood elevation certificate. Okay? And that flood elevation certificate basically says that, guess what? We will cover the flood insurance if the house is flooded. Because according to our flood elevation certificate, the property is actually so high that it's not going to get flooded. So we take on that responsibility. You show that to the insurance company, and they waive that, and they put the responsibility on us. Okay? Just a little caveat. Dam failure inundation zones. The dam owners, or I should say the owners of dams, have to put out maps of where the water will go if the dam does break. Okay? And the likelihood that they will, is determined by FEMA and the Army, the Army Corps of Engineers. Okay? Verify hazard severity zones, areas that are going to be prone to getting fires. Maria lives in La Cañada, Flint Ridge. She's in a V-fire area. Okay? She needs to be disclosed that information, because if she's not, and there is a fire, she's going to go back to the agent and say, "You never disclosed this to me!" So, you pay for my damages to my house now. And there's the lawsuit. State responsibility area. This is brand new, by the way, folks. So the SRA fees are I'll show you a map. It's less than 10% in the county of LA. This is actually just came out. Governor Brown just signed it. And it's a lot of hot water, because one of my colleagues, she's saying that this is taxation without representation. And I'll get into the state responsibility area. Earthquake fault zones, like we talked about, and seismic hazard zones. Those are the 6 minimum disclosures. Then you get into the property taxes. Can anybody name me one of the property taxes or the bonds that you have to disclose? Belarus, good one. Any others?
Bond Act.
1915 Bond Act, correct. Okay? Those are the 2 that are required for you to disclose. Okay? Belarus, nothing more than 2 guys' names. Henry Mello and Michael Roos. And how much is the property tax of the actual value? 1.25%.
Right.
That hasn't changed since the 70s. Okay? So, how is it for us to get around that so we can have more money to pay for these roads to get paved and to have better schools? It's called the bonds. Okay? It's a creative financing tool for cities, counties, and the state. Okay? It's creative and kind of underhanded. Okay? But be aware of that. You have to disclose it. Okay? All right. Any questions about that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Isn't seismic and earthquake the same?
No. Good question. I'll give you a great example. City of San Francisco is the bedrock for earthquakes, right? You see all the pictures, 1906, the entire city devastated, right? They don't have one single fault zone. None.
Wow.
But it's a very high seismic hazard zone. Okay? That means that the fault zones in the East Bay of San Francisco, so not on the peninsula, but on the East Bay, whenever an earthquake occurs, who's going to feel it the most? The city of San Francisco, because of their high seismic hazard zone. Okay? My son, I'll get into that later. But, yeah, so that's the distinguishing differences. Fault zones, those tectonic plates and the lines, that's the fault zone. The seismic hazard zones are the effect. The cause is the fault zone, and the seismic hazard is the effect. Cause, effect.
Got it.
Okay?
All right.
On top of those 6 hazards, the County of Los Angeles also has these requirements. Okay? Do you have to write all of these down? No, you don't. They're actually in the seller's guide. Okay, so it explains them. You have methane, dam failure, debris flow, all of the 6, and then tsunami inundation. How many of you remember the tsunami that hit Japan? Okay, massive earthquake, massive tsunami. How many of you thought it was going to hit California? I did. I thought so. Okay, so a ton of people were calling us. Okay, well, I'm in a tsunami zone. What are we going to do? Well, guess what? We disclosed it. You're in a zone. If the hazard zones fire up, get in that car and go in them. Okay, so we also have to disclose that if they're in a tsunami hazard zone. In San Marino, the city of San Marino has local safety element maps of the fault zones and the expansive soils. Expansive soils is like that seismic hazard zone. Okay? Any questions about these? Okay, I'm a big fan of Breaking Bad, that television series. You know, meth labs. So here's the fault zones in the city of San Marino. Sierra Madre Boulevard, right here. And you'll see the state fault zones and the county fault zones. Okay? This is an example of the amount of money that we've had to put in to make sure we give you the 100% accuracy that we put in every report. Okay? Here are the state fire zones. Remember how I was telling you the very high fire hazard severity zones? This area in pink, or I should say what, salmon, is in the fire zone. Okay? So, just to give you an idea, this is what we have to be disclosing, everybody. Okay? And remember how I said seismic zones? In green, you'll notice very little seismic zones here in the city of San Marino. And that typically happens when you have an area that has fault zones. Right here. Because if it was all really loose soil next to a tectonic plate or I should say a fault zone, the entire city would cave in like the Grand Canyon. So that's why you're pretty on strong, stable ground. This is very controversial, and I'll talk about it in a little bit. Transmission pipelines in the city of San Marino, you'll see that it's only right here. Okay? It's not that much. Okay? So that's a good thing, I guess, in a sense. So, any questions about the maps before I move on to the CAR? Okay? It's just a sample. Okay? I have to put into this, and I have to tell you that we do this for every single city in the entire state of California. So no matter if you're working in San Marino or elsewhere, that's the accuracy effect of our reports. Okay? So be aware of that. Okay? Because every city is different. I have to stress that. Every city has different disclosures. Okay? And are you responsible for doing that? Yes.
Yes.
But you have us to do that for you. Because then you defer the liability onto me or to Maria.
There you go.
Alright, yeah. CAR. Statewide Buyer Seller Advisory and SPQ form. Both of them inputted back in late November of 2011. They inputted, where is it? Among the other usual hazard zones as material facts, they now have put down that underground gas pipelines are material facts. Okay? PG&E was sued by the city of San Bruno in 2010 for 35 homes being instantly imploded and going up in flames and 8 people being instantly killed. Okay?
Wow.
This happened in September of 2010. And the city of San Bruno sued PG&E for non-disclosure. Okay? The city won. They got over $70 million. On top of that, you had all the other people suing PG&E. So, what did their PR people do for PG&E? They sent out over 5 million letters to homeowners in Northern California saying, hey, by the way, you're within 2,000 feet of a transmission pipeline. So what are they doing now? They're wiping their hands clean and saying, no, we disclosed it. It's on the seller's responsibility now. CAR saw this and said, wait a minute. Are you guys trying to pull a fast one on the real estate community? You gotta be kidding me. Seriously? So that's why it was inputted into the SBSA and SPQ form. But I'm guilty. If I get a letter from my gas company, it just tells me, the $100 I have to pay. That's it. All I care about is my bill. Everything else, I think it's junk, so I throw it away. So that's what the homeowners. I was never disclosed about this information. Be aware of that. It's been happening in Northern California and in San Diego, and usually LA follows last. I was up in Sacramento a few months ago. Governor Brown actually signed this bill into law. So starting January 1st, all home buyers will be notified of the pipeline notification law. So everything I just told you about PG&E being sued, $70 million, now it's led to Governor Brown, Jerry Brown, signing into law this notification. Okay? So it's just to give you a snapshot of what happened in the early 90s, like what Robert asked, what led to the disclosure industry in 1998? Well, same thing. All of these disasters lead to what? More disclosures. Okay? It's sad. There was a neighborhood kid killed in my neighborhood in Long Beach. 6 months later, what do you think went up? A stop sign, right? It was a lawsuit. Oh, we got to prevent more people from getting killed. So now they finally, it's more of a reactive rather than being proactive. Okay? So same thing with disclosures. The NPMS. So if you guys have Google, which most of us do, N as in Nancy, P as in Paul, M as in Mary, and S as in Sam. You type that up. You can actually type in your own property, and you can find all the pipelines that run by your neighborhood. Okay? This will be in the RPA starting July 1st of 2013. Okay? Be aware of that. Okay? Any questions about this? Nope? Okay. This is our plug. We've been doing this disclosure since 2010, actually in November of 2010, right after the disclosure or the pipeline explosion in San Bruno. And we started doing this because of our Northern California clients. It would be like Paul calling me, hey, Horacio, what is up with this pipeline thing? I want to make sure I cover my tracks, make sure I'm covering myself and I'm not getting into a hotbed of liability issues. So from those phone calls, that's what led us to put it into our industry standard report to disclose this. Okay. All right, new active mine disclosure. We're not talking about carbon, or meaning diamonds. We're not talking about diamonds, and we're not talking about gold. Okay, that happened back in the late 1800s. We're talking about active mines that are actually mining for hard rock materials for concrete and asphalt. We now have to disclose this. Starting this past year, January 1st of 2012, we had to disclose this. Okay? And the bill is pretty much protecting these mining operations from going out of business, from getting all the lawsuits. My son has COPD now because of all the dust that you've created. Okay? You can imagine all the lawsuits. So, it went into effect January 1st, 2012. And it states that we need to disclose whether this property falls within 1 mile of these mining operations. Wow. So, anybody know how many mining operations are here in LA County? Just guess.
10?
10? Higher. 50? Who said 50? You're one off. 49.
Wow.
49! Here's just the San Gabriel Valley. Okay? So you'll notice Pasadena, right around here, San Marino. You'll notice the Irwindale Speedway. You'll notice those massive holes in the earth. There's about 14 of them right here. Okay? My agents in this area, in Rosemead, Arcadia, and also Alhambra, when this law came out, people were like, oh my gosh, what is this all about now? So, and that's pretty much that area. And where Maria lives, up there by Altadena, is a mining operation. In Compton, there's one. Go figure. Compton! In Brompton, there actually is a mining operation. Right down below here in the other map. Okay? So, unique little disclosures that will bite you in the behind if you're not disclosing this information. Okay? Alright. I talked about this earlier, SRA fees. Gotta make sure I'm on time. SRA fees, state responsibility areas. This is a $150 fine. No, shouldn't say fine. A tax fee. Okay? So it's a fire prevention tax fee. It went into effect this month. Okay? Last month, I'm sorry, July. I'm still in July. And pretty much it's $150 if you fall under a state responsibility area. San Marino is not, okay? They're just in a very high fire hazard severity zone. SRA fees are basically in the areas that are in the hillside that does not have a fire department. And if they do have a fire department, and if it's the state fire department, that's considered a state responsibility area, because the state is responsible for that area, okay? And here's a snapshot of LA County. You'll notice Catalina Island is all in red, okay? So if you're doing any business in Catalina Island, and then you'll notice little drips and drops around here, okay? And I had to make this small enough so you can actually see the big picture of LA County. So again, do you have to worry about disclosing this? No. That's why you call us, okay? So just to give you an example of the SRA fee area. The number one question I get all the time. Let me actually go to this. The number one question I get all the time is, who regulates real estate licensees?
Department of Real Estate.
DRE. Who regulates title companies?
Insurance Commission.
Correct. The Department of Corporations, the DOC. Okay? Who regulates like Farmers Insurance, Allstate, First American Financial? The DOI, the Department of Insurance. Who regulates NHD companies? Nobody. Okay? Nobody regulates NHD companies. It's a completely unregulated industry. That's why you'll see, oh, try my new NHD company, try this NHD company, try this new NHD company. It's because it's completely unregulated. They can promise you the world, and there's no guarantees attached. Because when they go out of business, does their D&O insurance carry? No.
No.
Once the person goes out of business in the state of California, D&O does not carry. Okay? I'm in this for the long haul, everybody, and I hope you are too. You know, and if you're going to make a career out of this, and heaven forbid anything happens to you, but we do not want you to be in hot water if a disclosure company goes out of business. Okay? There's no barrier to entry. I don't need to take a test. I don't even have to show how much money, assets I have in my bank account. I can start my own NHD company tomorrow. Well, I can't, but because I had to sign a non-compete clause. But you cannot start. I mean, you can start one tomorrow, but you can pretty much do it out of your garage, and you can guarantee this person the world, but nobody's going to regulate it, and that's the biggest frustration for me. Okay, you have to reduce risk. I just set up my son's education fund for college. I want him to go to college. Okay, and I am, heaven forbid anything happens, but I'm trying to reduce risk by diversifying his mutual fund account and all that in the stock market. Same thing with real estate. You want to reduce your risk to literally zero. You want to have your best team, your best escrow, your best transaction coordinators, your best team, because you do not want to be in any legal hot water. You want to do what you're best at, which is selling and buying for your clients. Okay? So that leads to this. So, Rossio, what do I do if this NHD company comes to me and blah, blah, blah? Look for this. It's a summary declaration of liability provisions. How are you going to protect me tomorrow if there's something wrong in your NHD report? Ask them that. Okay? And if they do not show you how they're going to protect you, you shouldn't do business with them. Okay? Very important. We spell it out. This is how we're protecting you, everybody. Okay? Learn the law. I have another 30-minute presentation on property taxes. I do not want to bore you with that. But when we come back, we can also do that as well. So Robert, Paul, Noe, I don't know if I see Noe. But we can also do a 30-minute presentation on all the property taxes as well. Because there's a lot of information out there, everybody. And I am just covering the NHD portion. okay, which is just that natural hazard disclosure portion. With the tax component, every city is different. In the city of Long Beach, in 2019, I'll be done paying $20 a year for a bill that was passed for a bond. Okay, I had to know that. The other question is 1915 Bond Act. Why do we have a bill or bond called 1915? That happened, geez, almost 100 years ago. Why am I paying a property tax for a bond that happened back in 1915? What's up with that? What's up with that? Okay, and the reason for that was back in 1915, they said, we want paved roads. Okay, and that's the initial step of this 1915 Bond Act, which we still have almost 100 years later. Because when you go to my mom's country in Nicaragua, there aren't many paved roads, okay? And it's hard to get around. But here in the US, we take that for granted. And everybody that owns a house is paying for all of these trucks and cars to ride on these roads. And that's where the 1915 Bond Act came from, okay? So that's the biggest question I always get. Okay?
Let me
Yes,
add something
go ahead,
there.
Mark.
Guys, if you guys are not aware, the reason why he's stressing that is because in our offer, second page, item number 5, states that this is what we're supposed to disclose, the 1950 Bond Act. So when you guys all close an escrow and the 1950 Bond Act is not initialed and signed by your buyer, we stand to be in a lawsuit because we're supposed to disclose it.
Yep. Yep.
Now, right now, everything is, investors, REOs, 30-40% of the market. But the standard, normal seller's transaction, buyer transaction, we don't get that approved. We stand to be in liability.
Yep. And the biggest thing that we get from REO brokers is that, well, the bank said as is. Well, but when you signed your brokerage, it didn't say as is. It means that you had to do your due diligence. So that's how they come back. An attorney will. Because those real estate attorneys are ferocious. And for an omission, which usually for a 1915 Bond Act is like $15 to $50, you're going to get a lawsuit for that and pay thousands of dollars. It's asinine. It's ridiculous. So be aware of it. Robert, that's a really good recommendation. Obtain signatures and defer the liability to us. Okay? So, Maria Howard is your NHD expert. Okay, and the reason why I put this up here is because as a great salesperson, you have that ability to spin it in a way to help your clients. And what I mean by that is, what if somebody were to come up to you and say, what about the methane area in this property? What does this mean in this report? You go, that's a great question. You know what, Mr. Seller or Mr. Buyer? Let me get an expert on the phone who can answer that for you, because really, it's a really good legal question. And let me go ahead and get Maria Howard to call you. Do you mind that? Do you mind if Maria calls you? Because now what are you doing? You're deferring the liability to who? Maria. Okay? Very important. Okay? That's why I always stress when I'm hiring a sales rep. I just hired a sales rep in San Luis Obispo County. I want to make sure she completely understands the real estate industry, because I don't want her to go, fine, what do you want, Mr. Buyer? I don't want that. No, because whose reputation is on the line? Yours. Okay? All right. That is pretty much the overview that I wanted to give everybody. Are there any questions about the NHD industry? Okay? Yes, Robert.
When the industry started, I remember back in 87, 85 when the NHD was really hot, this is new, and the report was 1-2 pages long.
Yes.
And then there was no geologist signing off on it.
Yep.
Then the big thing is, okay, now it's 10 pages long. It was $45, $39, $55, $99. I mean, now it's $105, and the report is 25, 35 pages long.
Yep.
I mean, so this is all the reason why.
The reason why is all these lawsuits. And every year they're adding new laws. Just like how they added 2 new laws this year. They added the active mine disclosure, and they also are adding the SRA tax fee. So every year, I mean, geez, in 2010, it was the carbon monoxide detector information and the home energy rating system, HERS and the carbon monoxide. They come out with things every year. That's why it went from 1 to 5 pages to now, now it's up to 31 pages, okay? And the whole reasoning behind that is we want to make sure no seller or buyer has any loophole that they can find to sue you. That's what it initially comes down to. That's why we send it, when you order the report, we send it to your home, we send it to your seller, and we send it to the buyer. We provide the electronic copy of it, and we put it on our server, so you don't have to worry about wasting your CPU or your hard drive. Because a 31-page document and then the 12 pages for the tax report, you know, you're talking 40, 50 pages on top of the escrow documents and everything else. It's ridiculous. So that's why we put it onto our server at our station in Santa Ana, so you don't have to worry about, you know, where do I save it? You can always call us, say, you know, I ordered the NHD report 5 years ago on this property. We have it. Okay? Lastly, oh yes, go ahead, Rob.
So is it safe
Paul.
to say, is it safe, I'm better. Is it safe to say
Not really.
that once we open the escrow, just like you said, we can order it before we even open escrow. We got the report now. We're all busy. We want to go out and we want to sell homes. That's our goal is to sell homes. So we present the report to them. That's full disclosure. They approve the report, and then we move on. Right? It's not necessarily where I'm studying the geo and the soil and all that stuff. Right? And I want to make sure that everybody understands that, because I don't want people leaving here thinking that they get the 30 to 40 page report and you have to explain that whole book to our clients, guys.
Yeah. Yeah. And exactly what Paul, I have to reiterate, and that's why you have us. That's why you have Maria. That's why we put out, we're the only NHD company that puts out a seller's guide and explains all the legal obligations. Because if the seller or the buyer has a question, oh, you know what? Here's a really great form that explains all the legal obligations to disclosures. Okay, go ahead and read it. Because what do you want to do? You want to get back on that phone. You want to get back on that next transaction. You don't want to be wasting your time trying to explain some minute detail to somebody. Obviously, you're going to deal with very high, I call them high-stress clients, architects, engineers, and statisticians. They're going to read the document word by word, okay? And that's why it's so important to have us as your teammate. You have a question?
Yeah, so let's say when we give the buyers the report, would there be like 3 bullets that you think that we should actually just bring up,
No,
or none at all?
no,
Okay.
no. It's their legal obligation to read it.
Okay.
Because unlike all of us, when we get that new email account, you know, with Google, and it says the policy statement, does anybody read the 30 or 40 pages on that? No. But it's our what? Our legal obligation.
Okay.
Same thing with the NHD report and everything else. You just want to make sure that you're choosing the right NHD company. That's not
So
going to
that we're
have
back.
some, what's that?
So that we're back.
Yeah, so you're backed up financially, legally, and so you're not going to get into any liability issues in the next future. Okay? All right. Lastly, go ahead, Maria, because you have an escrow background as well.
Well, yeah, a little bit about myself. I've been in the escrow, Paul, I'm gonna give you my back. I've been in the escrow industry for 23 years, so I do know how to do an escrow, both business, residential, and REOs and short sales. I've done it for many years. I joined First American last year, which is an exceptional company, and of course you already know I have an exceptional boss. So I'm very proud to be part of this organization. The other thing I wanted to bring up that I also didn't touch on was the clue report. How many have ever ordered a clue report on their transaction? How many know what a clue report is?
I have no clue. What is it?
Okay. What it is an insurance claim history on the piece of property. Believe it or not, there are situations where I had an office that actually did not order one, and they doubled in a transaction and they lost it. It was over $50,000 worth of commission to them. And the reason why they lost it is because, coming back to where Horacio said, where a seller gets informational letters, they throw them away, they don't remember. Well, this particular seller failed to fill out his TDS properly. He did not report a claim. He only reported one. So when the buyer went to go obtain his insurance from his agent, he said, by the way, did you know that this property had already had a claim against it for mold? Well, that's a pretty serious thing. So the buyer got very skittish and upset and felt that if the seller omitted this one element, then how many other things did he omit? So they backed out of the transaction.
Wow.
Also, when you're ordering the clue report, you have an order form in your packet. the clue has to have a signature from the seller in order to order this. And the reason why is because of the Privacy Act. This is the actual personal information on a homeowner. A buyer can order it and pay for it, but he has to get the authorization from your seller. So I don't know if you intermittently have a form, or if you don't, again, our form is here, you can sign it and send it into our company. And we can give that to you. What I like to do to our clients, if you order an industry standard report, I give you the clue report for free. And it is only $20 more, but again, we like to offer that service. So take a note of all these things that are out there.
We have to put that on the escrow instruction or on the actual purchase agreement when we say NHD report, Maria Howard, and then
Yes, good question.
with the clue, with the additional clue
Yes,
report on it?
yes, that is a good point. Thank you, Paul. On your purchase contract, when you're putting in an offer, please, whether you're representing a buyer or seller, put in First American. Allocate your vendor. Because I promise you this, your seller is never going to counter a vendor, home warranty or NHD company or any of those vendors. What they're going to counter is what? Price and credits, correct?
Right.
So those are the things they counter. So don't leave it blank. Know that you're lining up with a great company and we offer the best protection. And again, like Horacio says, in our 30 years, we've never had to use our E&O insurance. We have an empirical error rate. So partner up with us and put that on your purchase contract. Get it at listing. If you are doing short sales, and we know some of them are a little longer, some they're trying the banks to streamline and do it within 30 days. But those that don't, and you ordered on a short sale, we update the report for free. So send me an email and all those things that we have available. I'm here. We have the earthquake booklets. I dropped them off with Sylvia. Those who want hard copies, you can get them from them. Those who like the PDF, go to the website and download on the electronic bookshelf. You can have it and put it on your desktop and send it to your clients. Okay?
Great.
You have the commercial,
have commercial.
earthquake books too as well?
Yes, we do. I have
Excellent.
commercial, and it's also on our website.
If you go to our website, everybody, it's also in Spanish.
Yes.
Okay, so you go to fanhd.com, electronic bookshelf. You click on there, and you have all of the PDF versions of our earthquake booklets in English and Spanish, and even in commercial as well. So, all right. Well, it is Wednesday afternoon, and it is a beautiful day. So,
Sure.
if you have any questions, remember, you might have a question when you get home tonight. I always do this when I lay down, finally go to bed, and my mind goes crazy. So if you do have any questions, call Maria, call myself, okay? So thank you, Paul. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Noe, wherever you are. And it was our pleasure, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
So let's give them a round of applause. Just remember that when you guys are filling out those purchase agreements, that we designate First American as a natural hazard disclosure company. And now let's also make sure that we also designate the additional clue report on there as well. Let's make that a habit. Get used to doing that. Thank them for I think did everybody enjoy the salad that they brought? The lunch?
Thank you, guys.
Fantastic, right? I'm about to go get another plate. So let's close out the meeting and then let's just get back to work, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Horacio.